Hello, I'm Mark. This is Three Bridges Model Railway. So I'm building a layout based on some of the railway journeys from my life. So this episode will have an update on the area behind the station, which I'm currently working on. So I'll take you through what's been going on for the last couple of weeks. So I've got about a metre running from the Iron Horse pub back into the start of the car park for the Amersham Station. And this is the area I'm going to make sort of up from a number of industrial units. And they're going to be based upon the Scale Scenes garage kit. But as Amersham's all about, I suppose, the wider transport hub, so I've got the bus depot. I'm going to have this as the first one will be a garage, and then I'm thinking probably make the next one a taxi rank and maybe a hire car. Well, I just need to make as a false wall at the back to allow for the roof support. Anyway, I'll crack on with that and I'll update you with my progress. So I've started with the usual printout, stick to card, glue up 2 pieces to give it some extra rigidity. These are one of the best purchases last year for good value for money, I would say. So I picked these up at Getz. I was there on the Sunday, on Manic Sunday, for a couple of hours. I could only make a couple of hours, but sounds of it, I had a lucky escape. It was getting heaving by the time I left after about 2.5 hours. These are on the West Hill Wagon Works stand. They're little magnets that allow you to do the corner brackets. They are brilliant. They were very good value as well. I'm starting to wish I'd bought 3 or 4 packets instead of just one, but I thought I'd give it a go, and I will definitely need to go and get some more. Making progress. So I've got the main shell of the cut down building sorted out. I'll go with the same doors. So now I'm on to sort of decisions like door open, closed. What do I actually want the unit to do? I always seem to remember you used to travel up to London and you'd see from the train, you'd obviously see some really, what looked like really rough, dodgy industrial units, especially south of the river. I remember this very much so. Like a dog in the street was all you would see, and then there would be a Lamborghini and nobody around. And you just always think, I wonder what goes on down there. So the next one, I've kept all the parts that I've cut off. I'll use those to make the next shorter one. So that's 3 units in place. So this is probably a good point to update on the next bit I need to do. I've drawn out roughly where I want my road to go through, behind the station, and then that goes down to the Iron Horse pub, a little roundabout I'm going to have, and then that road will drop down quite dramatically, and it needs to come under the 3 tracks. So I'll have a plan for a bridge. So British roads are typically about 5.6 meters wide, and I know that from the Google Earth images of the bridge, I know that the bridge height's about 4.5 meters. So transfer that down to double O gauge, so it's about 60 millimeters high. What I'll need to do now is I'll cut the base board out. So I've got the supporting frame where the tracks go through, and then this will be great to create me an open space that I can then put the road bridge through underneath. So I'm going to cut that first, then I'll start building up the landscape. I just need to raise it up behind the station a little bit on the road so that it comes up to the level of the back of the station. And I can then start scenicking that bit. And to do that, I'm going to go with the Scale Scenes tarmac paving, and they've got some concrete wall which I think I can use for the sort of hard standing between my 3 industrial units. So I'm now just looking to build up the landscape at the back. So I'm using cardboard. As having moved house, I've got a shed load of it, and it's a bit more environmentally friendly than chopping up foam and binning all the rest of it. So I've cut out where the road will drop down to go under the tracks for the bridges, and then what I'll do here is I'll make a solid wooden structure just out of like 3mm ply that I can then build the bridge and the road going up. I'm going to have to sort of force it up quite a bit visually, but it will start at this, at least at this end, it will be at the right depth. Well, I thought I was making good progress last night. Started on the road going up the back, and the pub, so I've got the pub garden, the garage is in, car hire, and my taxi company, and the sort of forecourts in front of them, and the road through. This morning I put the other buildings back just to check, and discovered a couple of clangers. My dodgy builder's been back, Barry and Steve, so I raised the ground up behind the station too much, and now my bridge doesn't sit on the platform. So I think I'm going to shift the whole station down a bit, because the other problem I have is this bit just doesn't look right. I've sort of done a lay-by the road, or where the road comes around to go in front of the station, and it's wrong. So I will remove that bit of paving. So as I've been doing this, I've sort of realised I need to understand where the struts are going to fit in front of the layout, because I don't want you to see the struts when I'm filming it, and I want to sort of maximise the view between the struts. So I've invented Luke. What is Luke? Well, when I was a kid, there was all these corny jokes called things like, what do you call a man floating in a river? Bob. What do you call a guy with a seagull on his head? Cliff. Well, this is Luke. So this is Luke. So he's quite handy. Basically, he's 60 centimeters wide and about 30 centimeters high, so 2 foot by 1 foot, and he basically sits like this. That's where the strut will come through, and that's where the next board will sit above. So he allows me to see what I will get on loft layout between the struts, but most importantly, that's the closest my head is going to get to the layout. I can't sort of look in. So when I'm doing a filming shot, that's how I'll get, and then I'll see hit the next strut, and then I'll. So if I'm trying to film it so that you can't see all the struts, and that's the idea. I don't really want to show that it's a loft layout with loads of wooden beams everywhere. Discovering that roads take a long time to do. So a lot of detail when you start thinking about pavements, roads, edges, road markings, etc. But making slow progress. There's going to be some trees on this corner here, so that'll hide some of the background. It's all looking a bit too sort of concrete and sterile at the moment. There's a lot of greenery in Amersham because you are in the Chiltern Hills, so I'm gonna think about a back scene that shows a lot of trees, just to sort of blend it in a bit more. Right, I think I'm going to leave this episode for the scenic side, at least at this point. I think I've done enough, and the length of this one will be long enough. So there's probably 3 more episodes to finish Amersham off. I have obviously just finished the bridge down the other end, and then obviously that'll probably tie in with completion of the back scene. There's a separate one on the signal box at Amersham. It's just a small structure, but I'll do that separately. And I also need to put my music posters on the station, connect up the lights, and electrify the track. But that needs to happen up in the loft so that I've got a running layout in the loft. All but be it a short one. It's probably 3 meters in length of end-to-end running track, but it's a start, and that's the way I'm building it. Some of you might notice there's some trees appeared. It felt applicable to add these. So as Simon, so if you watch the previous one where I sort of bash an old Hornby goods shed into something new for the layout, the guy who gave me that 20 years ago almost gave me these 3 trees as well, and I think he'd owned them for a good 20 years when he gave them to me and hadn't been out of the box. So they're about 40 years old, I suspect. Handle them delicately is what I've discovered, and obviously being in the loft for a long time, a couple of them have gone a bit square, but I've managed to puff them up. So I'll put some more around the base, but I felt it was fitting to have them on Amersham as it's got Simon's good shed on it as well. Right, so the next bit will just be a brief update on how the loft structure is going, and how the plans for that are coming together. So I'll go and do that. As you can see, I've got the subframe up, so this is what's going to support the sort of 3-deck system. So I've made up a sort of 3mm template of I suppose the end bracket, if you call it for want of a description, and then effectively the 3 decks will butt into this. So now I've got the template, I just need to do one correction. So it's this bit here. I've got the strut too far over. I sort of pushed it back, but I then realised that at the back I was then fouling with the main roof struts. Okay, back to the garage. So a couple of things have changed from the early episodes if you saw them. So originally this was an E shape coming from the back for the 3 decks. Obviously on paper it looks quite simple as an E shape, but when I then sort of started to think about it, there's quite a lot of weight hanging on each of those 3 decks down, and I just felt it was too much stress, so I've turned it into an 8 shape so that there's some support from both sides. I think that'll make it more stable. And another part is I've got this addition at the front here, so for the lower deck, though I've got the main deck behind, which will have sort of Wendover and Amersham stations I'm sort of done so far, there is another line into Aylesbury that from Marylebone that goes off towards sort of Princess Risborough, sort of heading towards Oxford, and then it cuts back to Aylesbury. And this is more of a goods line and a bubble car line. I used to travel on it for a couple of summers when I was working in Princess Risborough, so I was quite keen to include it. It just sort of added some extra diversity to the layout, but won't be building that till later. So I'm going to leave the strut in for now, and then I've got that option to add it. So the other thing that's crossing my mind is I want to make this dismantleable in case we did need to move. I didn't want to have to take the whole layout to bits. So I've come up with a conclusion that I will make the various boards as a rectangular sort of framework, open framework that the boards sit on, and then they'll bolt on to these brackets. I won't make these brackets part of the end board. I'm not comfortable ripping down. The sheets are 1.2 by 2.4 metre. They're enormous and pretty heavy, so I'm not comfortable ripping them down on the table saw at the moment because it's just I don't have that skill. Some guys make it look really easy. So I'm using a track saw, and I'll show you the process I go through to create the strips that will form the framework. So this isn't going to be a how-to. I'll just briefly document the makeup of the first sort of open frame for the bottom one. I'll maybe do that for a later episode. I'll do the whole section as how I did it. But this is just to give you an idea of the process I'm going through. So there's a reason why this one's not a tutorial. I got the first 4 in, feeling really pleased with myself, and then realised I'd forgotten my holes and my wires. Back to the drill. That was quite quick. There weren't a lot of holes to do. Obviously, if you buy a bespoke kit, they have lots of holes in them because they don't know where your wiring is going to go. But obviously, I do. So I only need 2 holes for the sort of Wendover board because I've just got my light 3 volt light circuit, and then my 12 volt DC, and then that'll be the other DC line at the front. Obviously when I get to Amersham I'll need to have an extra hole in for my DCC, but this board doesn't involve Amersham yet, so not to worry about it. Right, so you can see that the bench is all put together now, so I'll get it up into the loft. So as you can see, first deck is in. So I think I'm a quarter of the way there, so I obviously still need to make the 2 end brackets that hold up the higher decks, and I've now got the 5 steps to make the decks in the right process, and which I will laminate up because I think I'll be building decks for 3 or 4 years at the moment. But yeah, I've got a process which I'm happy with. As I say, I'll maybe document it on a later one, or maybe I'll do the next stage and I'll do it in more detail. But yes, it's a good feeling. It's felt like a long time getting here. So more observant, or if you've been paying attention, you'll have noticed that I've actually spanned it over 3 struts, so effectively 4 struts. So I was originally going to bring it to here, so 1.2, but I decided to take it to the 1.8 meters in length, and it is nice and rigid, so I haven't got any worries. I could also put an extra brace across in the middle if I was worrying about it sagging, but I don't think there's going to be an issue with that. So yes, which means less of the brackets to make. So to get from that end to that end, I need to make 4 brackets, which is a lot less than I think the 6 I was going to have to do. And I have a trapdoor, which is a godsend because I just get very nervous around this hole. So if you're interested in more in sort of doing multi-deck framework, open framework, check out Mr. Benchwork. He's an American guy. Basically, this is all based on his, so there's 2 of his constructions. So one's called the no licks, so it's basically a no helix 3-deck design, and that sort of gave me a lot of tips and advice that I could use. And then he does a very simple 2-deck system. He basically sells these, he makes these as his living, and obviously if you're in the States you can get it, but he also is quite happy to share some of the templates for this stuff because he's really keen for other people to build their own layout. So he's definitely worth a check out if you've not ever come across him and you want to build your own. I also follow, is it Pete Pirelli? But he just sort of seems to know what he's doing and builds it as he goes along. There's no sort of template to follow. Every build is bespoke, but they're interesting again and inspiring. But Mr. Benchwork is definitely one to follow if you want to build your own, and it will give you lots of tips and advice. Right, anyway, I'm going to call that one for this time round. So as always, cheers for watching, and if you've subscribed in the past, thanks a lot guys, I really appreciate it. I know I've sort of got a small band of followers, so I will work happily to create new material for those guys, and I look forward to seeing you next time when we'll do a bit more on Amersham with the road bridge going along the end of that and some of the scenics as well.